folks. Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast Podcast with Wayne. I'm Patrick, coming to you with some NFL football. We have been talking a lot about the Bears recently, especially with that number one pick in their hands. Justin Fields still having to kind of decide, what's his future as a Bear. We're also looking at the offseason and free agency signings and what could come of that in March. So tonight we're going to take this in a little bit of a different direction, still sticking on NFL. Still sticking on, the draft and those types of themes. But tonight, we're going to go through the entire first round playing general manager. I'm going to take all of the odd picks, so anything 1 through 31. Wayne's going to just counter me from 2 to 32 in the evens. And we're just going to go down the line and pick players for each one of these teams. There could be, mock trades thrown on the board. There could be all sorts of craziness. We're going to play off each other as we go and just see where it takes us. So without further ado, I'm going to kick this one off for the 2024 NFL Draft. The number one pick goes to the Chicago Bears, our Chicago Bears. It's no secret how we feel about them. If you want to know where we stand, go to our YouTube account. Check out all the videos we've been making lately on what we think the Bears should do at this pick. But no explanation really needed. I think Caleb Williams is the pick here. There's a ton of trade scenarios that could take place in terms of, getting that Godfather offer of sorts. But I mean, honestly, we just watched the Super Bowl. You see what a guy like Patrick Mahomes can do for your team. Even a year where, folks are kind of counting them out or, played pretty sloppy, here and there throughout the year. But, consistently, this is the second year in a row they've taken down the most complete team from Philadelphia to San Francisco. So, you got Caleb Williams. You've got a pretty decent defense right now. You've got some years ahead. Go ahead and get that guy who you think could be a generational quarterback and just don't look back at this point.
Yeah, and there's just so much more momentum now. I think a lot of Bears fans are kind of just owning up to it a little bit more so of. They're like, okay, let's just settle in with this. Just figure it out. Okay, we get Caleb Williams. Now what? Who do we get with the 9th pick? What free agents are out there, right? And then who do we trade? Who's our trade partner for Justin Fields? I think that's all kind of more so the talk. At least that's what's what I'm seeing on the the webs out there. So it just seems like that's more so. It's become like first denial, now acceptance, right? I think that's kind of where Bears fans are. Now we're just gonna kind of ride with it and go that way. But at the same time, yeah, there's always going to be the resistance. There's always going to be the people kind of fighting it there. But I think the idea for me is I definitely agree. I think now more so of just because of what the Bears will do. I think with Ryan Poles, this is the best thing for him, I think, in my opinion, just because it resets that quarterback clock. It puts more time on the clock for Ryan Poles to kind of work his magic there. And, it's kind of unfortunate, I guess, from the Justin Fields perspective. A lot of people still believe in him. Still believe he didn't get the right amount of help from coaching, play calling to overall talent around him. But at the end of the day, this is business. And I think that's where it kind of kills, I think, for a lot of Bears fans. But yeah, I agree. I think, Caleb Williams, I think he's the selection here for sure.
Sounds good. Number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the last episode, I talked a lot about Jaden Daniels a little bit here, but I'm gonna go with Drake May. I think, in this scenario, I was kind of looking at the team for the Washington Commanders, from the coaching perspective, from also the offensive coordinator, Dan, I wouldn't say Dan Campbell, but Dan Quinn, right? His quarterback in Atlanta when he was a head coach over there was Matt Ryan. I think maybe he feels a little bit more comfort in that case for more of a pocket passer or a quarterback with an arm. And I also think, I'm looking at Cliff Kingsbury and the kind of talent that he operated there at the quarterback position. I think he wants somebody that can throw a little bit more in the middle of the field, who he can coach the raw talent that the person has and kind of just mold the person to be the best quarterback that he possibly can be. So that means I'm going to go with Drake May. Drake May can zip the ball, really gun it. I think sometimes to a fault can play hero ball on occasion, but you kind of want that out of a quarterback, though. You kind of want a quarterback that you can, hey, their highs are highs, but hey, let's play it safe here. I think that's much easier to coach. And I think with Cliff Kingsbury, he has a really good track record. Also, one thing to note: Jaden Daniels is 23 years old. Drake May is 21. I know sometimes a lot of people are like kind of overplay that a little bit, but it just shows that Drake May has a lot more growth ahead of him, and he's his last season I think at North Carolina. A lot of people want to talk down on that a little bit, but the amount of talent that he was around him just dissipated in the draft. Josh Downs, I think, was one name, the wideout position that he didn't have, offensive line turnover, things like that happened and occurred. So I think now, with the going into a situation where he has more talent around him, I think it can be a bright spot for Drake May.
Yeah. Actually, in that slot for number 2, I was thinking Jaden Daniels might be the pick. I feel like, just in terms of his ability to improvise, the fact that they don't have a really great offensive line, may allow a guy with his type of skill set to kind of, create and get out of the pocket and figure out what to do on the fly. It was kind of like what Sam Howell was trying to do last year, failed, more toward the second half of the year. But in the same sense, it's, just based on the structure of the team right now, they might want a guy who's got the ability to make plays. And, Drake May, I think, has a bright future ahead, great arm. Honestly, he was going to be my pick at number 3. But it's just the way I see it. I don't think there's a huge gap between the quarterbacks. They're very different, but in a lot of ways, like I think evaluators are kind of, flipping a coin on who to select in both those slots. But now that he has fallen to me, I'll obviously take Jaden Daniels. I think, for Gerard Mayo, first year coach, needing a quarterback pretty badly, maybe wanting to bust out of the mold of like, the Bailey Zappi types, the Mac Jones types, maybe want somebody who could be, a little bit more athletic, somebody who can, obviously do a lot with very little behind him. I feel like New England's at a position right now where they need much more of a team surrounding Jaden Daniels now and going forward. It's the reason why there's been a lot of trade talks about, the Patriots possibly, you know, taking on a Bears offer of Justin Fields in the number 9 for the 3, or, maybe they're just trading down for as much capital as possible to just figure out, what they have to kind of do next. But, I don't think there's a bad route to take here. When you talk about Kingsbury, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you look at Mahomes, Murray, other guys. I feel like, yeah, May's kind of that guy who, probably best fits a Kingsbury system, or, how he wants to coach up a quarterback. But yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. And looks like we have 3 quarterbacks coming down on those first 3 picks.
Yeah, and I've been trying to figure out ways out of this, but I look at some of these teams. There definitely seems like there could be a team that does trade back, whether it is the Washington Commanders or if the New England Patriots want to get out of that, like that could be something. But at the end of the day, they do need a quarterback, especially with a new head coach, new offensive coordinator with Van Pelt. I do think that Van Pelt, I think actually Jaden Daniels is maybe he fits better for Van Pelt. I think Van Pelt, what I saw from what he was able to do with the Browns, he just adapted to them. We saw that they had like 4 different starting quarterbacks this season with the Browns. I know he wasn't really the play caller, but he definitely was more of the schemer and kind of making sure that the quarterbacks have the right plays in front of them and the designs as well. So he had obviously Deshaun Watson, but all the way to Joe Flacco, to DTR, to was it PJ Walker as well. He was able to mold the offense to their skill sets and strengths, and I definitely think that's what you need for an offensive coordinator. So for me, part of it is I kind of want to see like the mixing and matching of the quarterbacks a little bit more so of, and I think this pairing makes more sense. But yeah, again, Jaden Daniels, I think Cliff Kingsbury, he can get something out of Jaden Daniels for sure, though.
For sure. What are you doing at number 4?
Oh yeah, so for 4, I mean, how about this? Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, you got to take Marvin Harrison Jr. if he falls here. Like, I don't see him getting past the Arizona Cardinals here whatsoever. Cardinals, I think with Kyler Murray, they just need more talent around Kyler Murray. I think, it seems like they're going to at least have him for at least a couple of years until the duration of his contract, see how that turns out. But yeah, when you have Marvin Harrison Jr. here, it's like you got to take him, pair him up. Don't overthink it. I feel like this is match made in heaven. I think Gannon, the head coach over there, he's the defensive minded coach. There really isn't like a defensive talent that just stands out like a Myles Garrett at this point. So go with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's the most sure thing possibly in this draft, and really just don't overthink it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm in the same camp as you. That's who I had slotted in at number 4 as well. I mean, they're going to need to replace Marquise Brown if he doesn't stay there anyway. They've got a ton of needs in Arizona, but like you're saying, I think the top 9 from what I'm hearing in this draft are probably all going to be offensive players, just in terms of ability and such. So, I mean, this is pretty much a no-brainer there. At number 5, I've got the Los Angeles Chargers, first year, Jim Harbaugh, new head coach. Looking around the roster, looking at a lot of mock drafts, listening to what analysts are saying. I think there are obviously 2 wide receivers and a tight end that everybody's salivating over, with Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Brock Bowers. I think all 3 would be fine choices here. But when I look at the makeup of the Chargers, where they currently stand, they got Keenan Allen, they got Josh Palmer, they got Mike Williams, they've got Quentin Johnson, who they drafted last year in the first round. Gerald Everett's walking as a tight end, but the same sense they've got Donald Parham, who's had a few good games last year as well. It's like, for me, is getting another pass catcher the thing that's really holding Justin Herbert back from taking this team over the top. And to me, the answer is really no. The offensive line, it's an absolute joke. The defense as well has got a lot of holes. I think, like you were saying at 4, I didn't see any defenders that really fit the bill here at number 5. So, I mean, overall, I think with Harbaugh and the way that he likes to play football, I mean, he's gonna want to protect his top asset. He's gonna want to probably establish run as well. And for me, you got Rashawn Slater over on the left hand side as your tackle. He's kind of your franchise guy. Why not go ahead and fortify that line again with another high upside tackle in Joe Alt from Notre Dame? I feel like it's the safer of all choices, I think. I mean, again, people like to look at the video game type numbers that, one of those, pass catching threats could get with a guy like Justin Herbert. But in the same sense, we got to keep, Justin upright. I think if you're wanting to build kind of that foundation in that first year as a coach, you want some of those bigger building blocks on the O line or the D line. So I'm just going to take the top guy available in Joe Alt. And yeah, that's my choice.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Joe Alt selection. I think he can fit the right tackle for sure. I was contemplating the Brock Bowers selection as well. We do know that Harbaugh likes to utilize tight ends. He utilized Vernon Davis over there, when he was at San Francisco. So, that certainly is a possibility. But in terms of value, in terms of sheer impact, and with the existing talent that you just mentioned that they do have, like solidifying that offensive line really just makes sense for to protect your franchise quarterback there in Justin Herbert. So I would, if I were them, I would agree with you there. It just there's just that feeling that he might go with a Brock Bowers route. But yeah, I think overall the best selection in this case for him, for Herbert, for Harbaugh and all that would be Alt. But so he's definitely for me tackle number 1. So it's like, yeah, you got him there. You can put him at left tackle, but if he's a right tackle, he's going to be your best right tackle probably, for the next 10 years. So definitely agree with that. And I guess with that, I can move on to the Giants here at 6. Man, with the quarterbacks that are were on the board that are now off the board here, you got to think, okay, what player can make an impact? Or what player also makes the most sense? I think the idea from the Giants and what I've seen this previous season is their O-line just sucks. Like, it's so bad. And as much as I want to, take maybe some of these wideouts here that are very highly touted, I have to, like, I was looking at all the fan boards and all the forums for the Giants actually to just get a sense of where they want to go. And hey, you got to give the people what they want here. So I'm going to take Fashanu here out of Penn State. One of the more, I guess, gifted type of tackles in this draft. He's battled some injuries here and there, but certainly has a lot of upside. So, I think for him, it's like, okay, maybe he can play right tackle opposite of Andrew Thomas. Hey, look, right tackle now is becoming more of a staple in NFL teams. Almost as important, just as important as the left tackle. Just how edge rushers and defensive linemen are kind of attacking quarterbacks these days. So yeah, why not? Let's get Olu Fashanu here, solidify the O line. Worst case, he moves inside and you get a really good guard. But yeah, I think Olu Fashanu makes sense here for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Funny enough, I've got Olu Fashanu at number 6 as well. I was thinking the same way about the Giants as I was with the Chargers. I mean, unless they make some sort of trade to get into that top 3, if they're really going to move on from Daniel Jones, I mean, you got to do what you can to protect the guy. Last year, they had allowed the most sacks for any team. They gave up 85 sacks, and the next highest team gave up 65, and then it rolled down from there. And it's just like that margin, that gap just shows like how, incompetent, how far, this team fell last year compared to the year before. And yeah, I mean, it starts up front. So I'm totally with you. I mean, some folks might call it a reach. I still feel like, with Fashanu, he's one of those top 9. I feel like in the first 9 slots of the draft, he's probably the second or third or possibly the first tackle off the board in most people's, mock drafts as well. So, no, I think that's a smart choice. And, as long as you have Daniel Jones under center, I think you got to protect him first before you go out and, maybe invest in that top tier weapon. I mean, they got Jalen Hyatt last year. They've got some veterans there. It's just like, I don't know. They've got so many needs that they've got to kind of solve first before they, start going for, more of these accessory or ancillary type parts.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. But yeah, it would be nice to see some of those wideouts go there. But yeah, they just have so many needs. I think on the offensive line, it just makes sense. So, but yeah, who do you got for the Tennessee Titans at 7?
At number 7, I'm going to take Rome Odunze out of Washington. I mean, a 6'4" wide receiver. I think pairing him up with DeAndre Hopkins, if you can get anything else out of Treylon Burks, I think that's important. I think for Will Levis, he's going to need some weapons that he can truly rely on as being some of his, top guys. I know Hopkins won't be there forever. So I think this will be Rome's team, in a couple of years, but I think he has a very strong showing, coming out in that first year. I went back and forth between him and Neighbors. I just feel like, both guys are kind of in that same stratosphere. I just figure, would you rather have like an AJ Brown type, or would you rather go for the DJ Moore type wide receiver in Neighbors? And I just feel like you're going to want that big target, that big threat. I think pairing him, especially with Hopkins in that first year, they might get a lot, out of each other. And I think Levis, will help, him take that next step. I honestly would have considered an offensive lineman as well here for Tennessee. I think they need to, better protect Levis, but with Fashanu and Ald off the board, at 5 and 6, for me, it was just that's the next best selection that they can take, and they're definitely needy as far as wide receivers go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that direction. Yeah, offensive lineman definitely would be the preference, but when you got Rome Odunze out there, when you got Malik Neighbors out there, like you feel like you have to take one if both those offensive linemen are off the board there. So it totally makes sense. Just arm Will Levis. You can always, address the offensive line via free agency since you do have that rookie contract now. So I think it totally makes sense to go that route. So definitely agree with you on that selection there. And then I guess moving on to the 8th pick with the Atlanta Falcons, there's a lot of questions to think about the quarterback and all that, but with the 3 quarterbacks kind of taken off the board here, I really don't see them going that route. So obviously for me, I think they need an edge rusher. I think they're really kind of desperate for an edge rusher for that defense at the moment. They do have, was it Raheem Morris now as the head coach? So I think he wants to put a little bit more of his imprint on that defense and on that team. So I'm going to take Dallas Turner, edge rusher. I think that totally makes sense for them. Fits the bill, physical specimen, and I think that defense just improves. And hopefully they can figure out the offensive side of the ball. But at the same time, like that, the defense has some age on it there with Calais Campbell, obviously. So getting that edge rusher, I think, can make a difference for them, and building off of that.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think honestly, one of my dark horses for offseason signings here, as far as quarterbacks go, for Kirk Cousins, I think getting to Atlanta, kind of teaming up with Raheem Morris. They both spent time together in Washington at the start of Kirk's career. They had 3 seasons there. They may have a good rapport there. They may have obviously a lot of familiarity with one another. But when I look at the best destinations for Kirk Cousins right now, with where the Vikings stand in that NFC North, you've got the Bears, reloading. Detroit obviously having a great year as well as Green Bay. It's like they may want to take some time off. So with Atlanta, you got that QB vacancy there. They talked a lot about an extra wide receiver, but like you're saying, like that kind of edge talent is getting older. It's not as explosive, and bringing like the top guy off the board to be your first edge for the team seems like a really smart choice for them.
Yeah, for sure. Who do you got at number 9 for our Chicago Bears?
Man, it's a dream come true. I mean, I honestly didn't slate it out, this way on purpose. Me and you had the same 8 going off the board. Maybe no, I mean almost perfectly. Maybe 7 was a little bit different on your board, but with the choice of wide receiver between Odunze or Neighbors, in my draft, Malik Neighbors just fell to me at 9. I'm taking him. I mean, for us, it's looking at edge, talent up at the top of the board, or it's wide receiver talent. I feel like with what's available in free agency at the price tags that they'll probably command, I just don't think it's the smart play. I mean, it sounds like Bears are even in on Danielle Hunter right now as a possible, edge rusher for us in free agency. So, perhaps, having that wide receiver choice there just becomes, pretty obvious and clear. And yeah, I mean, if we could pair obviously Malik Neighbors with DJ Moore, Caleb Williams in his first year, I think there's a lot of exciting times to come for Chicago with that nucleus there. And yeah, it's an easy choice for me at 9.
Yeah, I love me some Malik Neighbors. I honestly would be happy with either of them, but if we get Malik Neighbors, the Yak God is what his nickname is, just because when he gets the ball in open space, he just goes, and it's incredible to see him in open space like that. And who better to be a teammate and kind of teach him the ways a little bit than DJ Moore, who is in and of himself his own Yak God, basically. So. I would love to see this pairing. I think it could work wonders. It could definitely make whoever is at quarterback, Caleb Williams probably right now, right? But it could definitely help Caleb Williams with his first year, kind of just figuring out who to pass to and getting more weapons out there. So I definitely love that pick. Moving on to the 10th pick, we got the Jets here. Man, the Jets, I think they need, with those 2 wideouts gone there, I think they go offensive line. So I'm gonna take JC Latham from Alabama. I think he makes the most sense, plays the right tackle position. They can figure out whoever plays the left tackle. I think they could potentially get maybe a free agent or something like that as their kind of more so second wide receiver to kind of spell Garrett Wilson a little bit there. He seems to be a little bit more of the only wide receiver talent that they have at the moment. I know there's Randall Cobb as well, but they definitely need more wide receiver talent. That being said, it's a deep wide receiver draft, so they could probably get one. I think they have a 3rd-round pick. So I'm going to go JC Latham, Alabama. Pretty hard-nosed right tackle from Alabama. So I think he kind of just makes sense. Got to keep Aaron Rodgers healthy and him upright, because that definitely ruined the season for them this previous year. So makes sense for me.
For sure. I mean, with the Jets giving up the 4th most sacks last year, I kind of saw the same needs there. Mekhi Becton is a free agent, and they also don't have a 2nd-round pick. So it's like, what's your biggest need? Aaron Rodgers coming back from an Achilles last year was an absolute nightmare for that offense. And yeah, like you're saying, I think getting that protection is important. I had Talise Fuaga going up there at number 10, but in the same sense, I mean, him and JC Latham, at least on my board, weren't very far apart. So no, I think it's a smart choice, and Jets get more protection there.
Sounds good. Yeah, that was my second choice. So it was. I think either one's going to be a good one. So, but yeah, it's just a matter of what their preference is. So, wait, who do you got at 11 for the Vikings?
Yeah. So this is where the controversy will probably start between our boards. Perhaps, I don't know. But at number 11, like I said, free agency starts before this draft. I really think Minnesota is, you know, capable of resigning Kirk Cousins. I think they're capable. If I am Kirk Cousins, if I don't have that just hometown feel, or feel like I have you know, some unfinished business that I want to stay in Minnesota for, I would probably look at Atlanta. I mean, I think it's a division that's going to be easier to win. You walk in, you get Drake London, Kyle Pitts, others, obviously Bijan Robinson. There's a ton of weapons that Kirk Cousins can play with, and that defense was really good last year for Atlanta. So I think he's gone in my situation. And for Kevin O'Connell, he doesn't have a lot of reserves there at quarterback, but I think the one thing he does have is time. And I think, at this point, I think him and Kwesi will look at the board and kind of say, okay, who can be our quarterback of the future? We may have some time here to develop. We may have some time here to like let the NFC North, go head to head, knock each other out, and maybe in a couple of years, we can be back in that mix, hopefully sooner. Just knowing what we know about quarterback prospects and what we talked about recently, I think the one guy who's getting the most helium at this point for me is JJ McCarthy. I think Kevin O'Connell would love to have, a guy like that to build, to mold, to have that time to like really, nurture in a lot of ways and do it, himself. And I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to fall too much further if he does past Minnesota, but I just see this being kind of his project, a guy he looks at with upside, the winning capability. And I think this would be a great fit for McCarthy as well. I mean, just to kind of pair up with an offensive mastermind like, Kevin O'Connell and give it some time. So maybe it's Nick Mullins, maybe they bring back Josh Dobbs, maybe it's somebody else kind of taking the reins to start off the year for Minnesota. But I think with what's on the board and with what Minnesota's looking at, I mean, with the potential of Daniel Hunter leaving and others, I mean, I just feel like this is a team that, they may end up signing Justin Jefferson to a long-term extension, but they feel far away from being competitive when you look at what else is going on in the NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you talk about kind of restarting the quarterback clock in a way, right? So, we can do that, then you can sign free agents, you can build out more of a roster through free agency as well as the draft. So, this certainly is where kind of letting go, thanks for the memories of Kirk Cousins and moving on from there. Sad to see it, but it totally makes sense. I do like your call out for Kirk Cousins to go to the Falcons. I think that that kind of makes sense in a way. Just the team, the talent that's around them. Like there's a lot of young talent, and what goes well with young talent is obviously just a veteran quarterback that can kind of be that stable presence, calming presence that has seen every single defense, knows what to do there. And I think Kirk Cousins, he kind of fits that mold. Him, and then being out with like all the talent that they have, Bijan, Drake, Kyle Pitts, etc., Jonnu Smith, like all those players like would definitely be better players overall with a Kirk Cousins there. So, but yeah, to your point, this could make sense from Kevin O'Connell's standpoint of just, hey, we need to get a little bit younger at the quarterback position. Justin Jefferson, we need to think about him, re-signing him, and then also re-signing our defensive talent too. Danielle Hunter, like he's a free agent, and he's probably he's a premier edge rusher there. And so all these things are going to be costing money, capital that, do the Minnesota Vikings have that and have the ability to pay all those guys, and then also pay, Kirk Cousins $45+ million or something like that? Hard to say. So I could definitely see something like that. I think I chose to go a different route, but I would not be surprised. This definitely is where I think the NFL draft for 2024 gets a little bit interesting because, yeah, there's a lot of questionable things that are happening at the quarterback position for these teams.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what'd you do there?
Oh, I did get I got Tyrion Arnold, top cornerback in this draft,
Mm-hmm.
physical, very physical. I think he can make sense, going over there with Brian Flores' defense, proving that the secondary was kind of the issue more so, I feel like. So adding him in there, solidifying that, maybe going one more go around with Kirk Cousins or something like that could make sense for the Vikings, but would not be surprised if something like this happens for the Vikings, though.
Sounds good. Who do you have at 12?
Well, let's talk about quarterbacks, bro. You know what? I mean, there's a couple of things to your point, like similar situation in a way. I feel like coaches these days, they're coming in, they're trying to figure out who do we want to be pairing up as our quarterback, and he kind of like Sean Payton, I think, kind of showed his hand a little bit with Russell Wilson, not playing him for the last I think game or two there. So, for me, it's like, okay, what quarterback might fit the mold of what Sean Payton wants more so of? You took JJ McCarthy off the board, but he was actually the second quarterback I was possibly looking at for Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton wants somebody that can be maybe more the first, second read type of quarterback, and from there can make some improvisations. I think one thing that kind of, I guess, pissed him off or put Russell Wilson in his doghouse more so, just Russell Wilson kind of just improvise, after the first read, or maybe even before the first read. So I think Sean Payton wants to call more of the shots, so he wants a young quarterback that can fit the mold there. And I'm going to go with the Oregon quarterback, Bo Nix. I think it makes sense from that perspective. 6'3", about 215, 220, 220 pounds there. Got a good arm, good mobility, but very much a first, second read type of person. High percentage. I think it was like 77% completion percentage. So I think that fits exactly kind of what Sean Payton wants. Just a quarterback, makes the proper reads, makes the right decisions, but can, improvise here and there when the play does break down eventually. So I'm going to go Bo Nix, 12th pick here for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, I had the exact same player falling to Denver there, based on JJ McCarthy going, one spot above, but I think Bo Nix is the right guy there. Needs to learn a little bit more of the structure of playing, I guess within offense, within the pocket, he kind of seemed to have plays break down with him. That's kind of where he thrives. But, with Peyton having all that experience with Breeze, he's going to want to kind of mold a guy like that to being, the next Drew in a lot of ways. But, like you're saying with, looking at the New York Jets, I mean, Denver doesn't have a second round pick. They've really got to just nail what they need as soon as they can. And so I can see definite reach potential here for Denver, just going out, getting the quarterback, even if it's, well past what they actually need. Or you could see a trade down situation where, perhaps somebody else is moving a little bit up the board. They think they can still get Bo Nix later, in the first round, maybe the second, whatever it is. But yeah, I definitely see them needing that quarterback, leaving this draft.
Great. Who do you got for the Las Vegas Raiders at 13?
Yeah, for me, again, the snowballs down the board. I have three quarterbacks going in a row here. Again, this calls for a little bit of desperation. If you're Las Vegas, you can't really wait on a quarterback falling to you at your next pick in the second round at this point. I mean, there are seemingly five guys that, most want to get their hands on in those first couple of rounds. And to me, it's a team that is desperately needing, that guy under center who can be a leader, could be, somebody somewhat of a change for them. Aiden O'Connell was serviceable last year, especially, in their run, toward the end of the year with Antonio Pierce as their interim head coach. I think he wants to have a franchise quarterback himself, and I just don't know if the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be, the first destination for Justin Fields, considering, all the history him and Luke Getsy had in Chicago. If that pairing happened to, come to be with some sort of trade, I would have a serious laugh. I know Chicago would as well. But I think they take Michael Penix here. I think it's a guy who's, really, I guess, in tune with the game. I think he's got one of the higher IQs as a quarterback. Definitely has, good arm strength. He can, make a lot of throws. I think one thing they talked about was improving his touch. He is a little bit older as a pass catcher compared to his peers, but I think that'll actually serve him well with Las Vegas. I think, as a team, they're kind of on that fringe of being a 500 team. It might be nice to have a guy who's a little bit more experienced, a little bit older, somebody who can come in and, kind of feel like he can push for a starting job right away, especially when you've got another young quarterback, and Aiden O'Connell right there. So, for me, I thought this was again a bit of a reach. I think a lot of drafts have Penix going somewhere in the second round, but if you're hungry for a quarterback, I think like in most drafts, like some craziness can happen, and I just see teams not sitting on their hands to wait and go out and get their guy, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, look, I definitely see the Raiders being involved in potential trades. I think that's like one thing, we see here, right? And I think I called this back with the Bears potentially, hey, does JJ McCarthy, does he crack the top 10 there with the Bears pick? Like that could be a trade partner potentially, that the Bears might have in the future where we trade back and maybe, we don't want one of those wide receivers, maybe we want more of an edge rusher, and then maybe want to pick a wide out more so in the second round. That could be a certain scenario that Ryan Poles looks at. So, yeah, I could definitely see something like this, maybe happening. But I think this just goes to show you kind of, how maybe the quarterback situations. We'll see what happens with free agency and if there's any potential trades that happen between now and the draft. But obviously, yeah, there's a lot of needs I think for quarterback, and in this area, yeah, there could be some reaching here. So that being said, yeah, like you were mentioning, they do need a quarterback of some sort, whether, yeah, it is Fields or that would be hilarious if it is Getsy and Fields again in Las Vegas. So, but I would love to see Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days just respond and drill that that maneuver there. So, yeah. But yeah, I guess moving on here to the 14th pick. We got the New Orleans Saints on the clock. They need a tackle. They need tackle. They need to keep their quarterback, Derek Carr, healthy, not banged up as much. And I was looking at who is available. I think you mentioned Fuaga. I'm gonna take Fuaga here. I got him going to the Saints. It's gonna be, I think, between J.C. Latham and Fuaga for both the Jets and the Saints. Just both teams need that right tackle, and both Fuaga and Latham kind of foot the bill there. Fuaga definitely feels like he could be a player that just destroys people. I think one comparison I saw him was kind of like a Darnell Wright. So again, would not be surprised of him going to the Jets at 10 there. But yeah, I have him kind of falling a couple spots here to the Saints. Offensive tackle from Morgan State, kind of, yeah, it's like a Darnell Wright. But yeah, just gets more protection over there for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I had it flip-flopped. I had J.C. Latham here for New Orleans, so just flip those two tackles and we're good. New Orleans is in a pretty bad spot cap-wise. They have the worst cap space in the league. They're about $80 million over. They really can't afford to get cute in terms of what they do with their draft. They don't have a lot of flexibility in free agency to go out and fill some needs. And, their starting left tackle right now may be leaving in free agency. Their backup Trevor Penning didn't really pan out last year. So in a lot of ways, they've got to draft for need and filling those starting vacancies. So no, I thought it was really sensible to go tackle here and take a guy who definitely deserves to be in that slot too, in Fuaga.
Yeah, for sure. Who do you got? 15 Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, so our boards may vary, but based on how this draft's gone so far, there is a really top pass catcher here on the board. We're looking at an offseason where Michael Pittman, is looking to test the waters in free agency. He said that, he's enjoyed his time in Indiana, but in the same sense, he's just, he's wanting to see what's out there for him. If I was in his shoes too, why not see what the best offers are. Maybe you can pair up with better quarterback. Maybe it's a different environment for him, but I could totally see Michael Pittman leaving in free agency. And even if he does resign, I still think there is a need there to get more, pass catching help for Anthony Richardson. You look at what Josh Downs was able to do this year, kind of a breakout year for him, coming in as a rookie. Alec Pierce, serviceable as kind of the tertiary wide receiver, but you bring in a guy like tight end Brock Bowers from Georgia, man, that could really, change the face of that offense. I mean, I kind of liken it to a Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews pairing. If you were to kind of get Richardson and Bowers there together for the Colts. I think Shane Steichen would have a ton of fun, kind of scheming for a guy like Bowers and making him, kind of his like Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews type. And hey, they may be comfortable letting Pittman walk, knowing they could get their hands on Bowers. Now, obviously, that'll happen after the free agency period's over with, but that's a great consolation prize.
Yeah, that's a great consolation prize. Like that would be incredible. That was actually one thing I was kind of looking at too was, we were talking about, Brock Bowers' destinations. Like he could definitely be either, going at 5 to the Chargers, or he could, fall and kind of just spiral out there because there really isn't too much of a need for a playmaking tight end, even as good as Bowers, right? For some of these teams here. So, yeah, they could definitely have Brock Bowers falling this far and going to, probably a great situation like Shane Steichen with Anthony Richardson and Brock Bowers. Like that's that's great. They always say that the best friend for a mobile quarterback, such as an Anthony Richardson, is a tight end because, they get to block. They also get to catch. So what better type of tight end can you possibly get than a Brock Bowers? So that is a great draft pick, I would say here.
No doubt. Who do you've got at number 16?
Yeah, so number 16, you got the Seattle Seahawks here. Oh, man, there's definitely a number of, I guess, ways I can go about this. I am looking at who is on the board right now. And, if Pete Carroll was still around, like, I might have gone Terrion Arnold, but, I know there's still a defensive-minded coach still out there. And, this Seattle Seahawks team, I think, one thing that they struggled out was their offensive line. They just got demolished, I think, especially in the interior. And there's a certain prospect that I know a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans because he's kind of a local. He went to UW guard, or he's going to be a guard, or I think that's where a lot of people are translating for him to be. Troy Fautanu from Washington. I think he kind of makes sense for them. This is a little bit more of a need type of draft pick that we have here. But, I think from the Seahawks perspective, they get a local, they get somebody that knows Seattle, but at the same time, he is a very talented, I think he was their tackle, but at the same time, he translating to the NFL as a guard. He definitely has the makeup for, potentially a Pro Bowl guard there. So got Troy Fautanu in that situation. I did think about quarterback a little bit, especially if Michael Penix was going to fall here, as a potential future quarterback. But, the way that the board felt, I got to take the guard here for the Seahawks.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting pick. I had an edge rusher going there that's still on the board. I might have to keep my edge in mind here now as we move down the board, just knowing that he's now available without the pick. I know that Leonard Williams is leaving for Seattle, potentially. I mean, I think they're working on an extension or trying to get him back in free agency, but who knows? I still think, regardless if they do resign Leonard Williams, they could definitely use some help on the edge as well, fortify that defense and give Mike McDonald another fun weapon to play with there in his first year in Seattle. But moving forward, going to Jacksonville, on my board, I've got the top cornerback still available. I know you talked about him on your board, but I'm going to take Terrion Arnold here. Jacksonville last year, they gave up the 7th most passing yards per game. I think in a lot of ways they just, they've got to get younger. They've got to get, deeper in the secondary. I think, looking at CJ Stroud being that top competitor, across the division from them, even Anthony Richardson coming back next year. It'll be nice to have a little bit more, strength there. For them, that seems to always have been kind of their liability, and they got picked apart, by the Houston Texans at home earlier in the season last year. So, like you're saying, just a guy with great IQ, speed. He's very smooth. I just think Arnold is probably the safest pick at cornerback there. And, I'm just going to slot him in there as, the cornerback 1 for the Jaguars.
Yeah, and that's great value. I feel like that just makes total sense from their perspective, especially if the way that it goes here. If Terrion Arnold does go, say to the Vikings, like there's obviously a bunch of other cornerbacks that we can definitely talk about, or one of them probably will be drafted soon. the Nate Wiggins of the world, Quinyon Mitchell, etc. So, but yeah, I think Terrion Arnold, if he falls to the Jaguars, you got to take him and don't question it basically there. So, and then I guess moving on to the Bengals, with the 18th pick here, there's some cornerback talent, obviously just talked about, some wideouts potentially, T Higgins, he, a lot of word on the street, he's going to be franchise tagged. So maybe not that. They really, though, need to solidify that tackle position. I feel like at the right tackle. So I'm gonna go with Amarius Mims here, offensive tackle for Georgia. Big strong person from a great school, SEC in Georgia. There, I definitely think that he can fit right in there, start day one, and hopefully keep Joe Burrow up. That was a big killer in momentum. Like, it felt like the Bengals this previous season, they were making a run similar to kind of what the Bills were making later in the season, and then Jake Browning did a decent job, but obviously not that Joe Burrow X factor there. So I think got to invest in the line. Let's finally, if I'm the Bengals, I'm like, let's finally solidify this thing. Make sure that we give Joe Burrow enough protection and plays a full season, and hopefully have a long playoff run there. So Amarius Mims out of Georgia.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, especially after Burrow kind of taking hits going down last year, playing injured. Definitely want to keep him as healthy as you possibly can. And I think they have enough strength on the defensive side, and even at the wide receiver position. They might have to retool a little bit with Higgins possibly going, Boyd not resigning. So we'll just have to see. But no, I think that's a pretty smart choice there. At 19, I've got the Los Angeles Rams. Going into last year, they had one of the worst secondary ratings from PFF, just kind of looking at the entire unit. Coming off the Super Bowl victory, they ended up losing a lot of their talent there. Jalen Ramsey, they've had guys like Aqib Talib in the past there, but really started to thin out. I think last year they fell somewhere in the middle of the pack. Came on, strong toward the end of the season, but I think for them it'd be just really smart to get a top of the charts type cornerback. Seems like Cooper DeJean would be kind of a perfect fit there. I mean, just overall size, his strength. I think that's what sets him apart from most of his peers at the cornerback position. A lot of them are more your coverage, ball hawk, thin, frame type guys. He's just pure muscle, pure strength. He's very smart and he's a good athlete. They say he's amazing. Kind of going after balls. He's got good ball skills and such. I think the one thing is just his overall quickness, just based on his muscles. So maybe he doesn't have the best turn radius when it comes to kind of defending some of the vertical passing and things like that. But, he's still graded up toward the top as, one of the best cornerbacks here. He seems like a smart player. Seems like Sean McVay would appreciate somebody like him. So I just think that's a smart choice for the Rams.
Yeah, no, he fits the mold, I think, for what Sean McVay is looking for. So very hard, tough, physical player. So I think he really would fit in there with the Rams. It makes sense for them going forward for that defense. Now without Raheem Morris, it's like, all right, let's see how we can mold this defense a little bit more. So I think Cooper DeJean, he can fit in anywhere in any kind of defense there. So makes total sense. And then I guess moving on to the 20th pick, Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock here. So, I was looking throughout their entire roster, and man, their offensive line kind of sucks. I think that's the only way to put it, as not too much talent. A lot of young offensive linemen here. So I have to go offensive line, especially we'll see what quarterback they bring in, but it's hard to protect even a Super Bowl winning quarterback like a Russell Wilson if you got a really crappy line here. So I'm gonna go with, I think, the top ranked offensive tackle here that's left, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. I think he's graded much more of a pass protecting type of tackle. So I think it kind of makes sense for what the Steelers are trying to do. I think kind of in this range area, there's, we're seeing a lot of more offensive linemen being taken here. So kind of predicting that in the draft that there's going to be a run kind of in this like 15 to 25 range. So, we'll see how things turn out. But yeah, a lot of teams looking to solidify their offensive lines. So, but yeah, I think with the Steelers, they really need to have a better line, and I think again, whichever quarterback that they do bring in needs to be protected. So yeah, got Tyler Gunn here going to the Steelers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm also, at least for the Steelers, looking at, potential secondary help. I think I went with a cornerback in this scenario there. I think Tomlin, would probably do well in just drafting DBs overall. I mean, just having that kind of experience. So there's a lot of good options there at defensive back as well toward the end of the first round. But no, I think that's smart, especially with whatever quarterback they're going to have under center. They're definitely going to want a little bit more protection and help to build holes for Jalen Warren and Najee Harris as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of I'm looking at this draft board right now. There's a lot of talent out there, so this will be incredible how potentially this draft board turns out here. So just want to call that out there. But yeah, who do you got at 21 for the Dolphins?
Yeah, so for me, I think just looking at the board and think kind of how things have shaken up, definitely having a change here and pivoting a little bit, but staying on the same position. I think for Miami, looking at what happened last year with Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, who plays outside linebacker, edge type going down. Christian Wilkins is a free agent. He may not resign. So if I'm Miami, I don't want to take any chances of something like that happening again, next year on their route to, a Super Bowl, I think in their eyes. So, give me Leatu Latu. He was supposed to go a little bit further up my board, but based on how this mock draft went, I think he's just the best player available at edge. I think, everyone's talking about just his move set, his explosiveness. I mean, he seems to almost make his, top peers look, almost pedestrian in terms of their skill set overall. I think a lot of the fears around him are, some of the injury concerns and kind of the potential for that. So I think if you're going into the year and you have Jalen Phillips, you got Bradley Chubb back, may take a little bit of time with that ACL, but I think just slotting in Latu, taking that chance, would be a smart gamble for a team that's trying to go for it all. If you're just trying to get the best possible player you can.
No, yeah, this is great value, I think, for the Dolphins here. So it totally makes sense, I think, for them. Again, if some sort of edge rusher like that, like you mentioned, all the injuries, that really killed and stifled their playoff chances. Like they were, I think, was it Justin Houston? They pulled him off the couch, basically. And, they definitely don't want to be in that situation. I think getting younger, getting more physical in the front seven totally makes sense for them. And yeah, having a Leatu out there, I think that could be definitely a steal. I think if he falls that far. So, and then man, this is definitely going to be a tough one. Well, maybe not as much actually. The Eagles on the clock here, 22nd pick. There's a lot of talent that I like here. Some cornerbacks. They can definitely use some secondary help. Their secondary just got exposed, I think, this previous season, especially at the safety position. Some decent safeties, I think, out there that, I think you took DeJean, who I was kind of aiming and eyeing on here a little bit. That being said, I'm going to go Cam Kitchens. I'll go Cam Kitchens here. Miami, I think solidifies. He's definitely that ball hawk kind of safety. I mean, safeties, Miami, what is this? Early 2000s, basically again. He definitely fits that mold. I think he fits. He's like the next man up with regards to a Ed Reed type or Sean Taylor type. I feel like safety coming out of Miami. So very much a playmaker, and I think that's kind of fitting what the Eagles really need right now. So yeah, I'm going to take Cameron Kitchens here.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, looking at where the Eagles started the year versus where they kind of ended up. I mean, even going back to their Super Bowl year, I mean, that front seven was dangerous. It was deep. The secondary was great with Bradbury and Slay a couple years ago, but man, it just really tapered off. I mean, Reed Blankenship gave up a lot of tackles, kind of, I guess, free plays in the secondary from what I had seen. Kevin Byard, they brought over from Tennessee, is just kind of I mean, these guys should have, played to their potential. They should have been a much better, team overall. I think they ended up being, in the bottom 5 in terms of passing yards allowed. I think maybe I even saw top 2 worst team in pass yards allowed. So to kind of fortify that secondary is smart. I went the cornerback route for them, just based on the talent on the board. But in the same sense, like they just need to revamp everything back there and really bring that defense back to what it was their Super Bowl year.
Yeah, for sure. No, 100% agree. Like they definitely underachieved that, especially that defense. So yeah, hopefully providing some whatever secondary help makes sense, I think, here. But moving on to the 23rd position, Houston Texans are on the clock. Who do you got?
Yeah, so based on how the board has kind of played its way out, I'm going to do a slight pivot here from who I had penciled in at 23 for Houston. I'm gonna go ahead and instead of taking a cornerback, I'm gonna go with an interior defensive lineman. Really help them, build that front wall up around Will Anderson, and hopefully if they can sign Jonathan Greenard, back to the team, just continue to build that strength up on the front line. I had Jershawn Newton going up a little bit higher to the Bengals, at least in my mock, but to have him available there, honestly, they say he's a great pass rusher, almost plays kind of like an edge type position in the center. He's violent. He's a good tackler. He's just very physical. The only knock on him is his size. I mean, if that's the one thing kind of knocking the guy down, I think guys like Aaron Donald have kind of proven like if you're just a dog and you're just, got a nose for the ball, you got that intensity. I mean, that should matter first, and then worry about the physical traits second. And I just think he's a gamer. Coming out of Illinois, I think he would slot in perfectly with Houston. I'm actually glad he fell to me here at 23. Just really make that team much meaner, up front, and that really helps guys like Derek Stingley and Jalen Peter just kind of like step up their game in the secondary and make their lives easier, and hopefully lead to more turnover opportunities for them.
Yeah, I know, like the pick. I mean, D'Amico Ryans, like he is the defensive mind basically over there. So I think it totally makes sense. And I think in several mock drafts that I did pick Jazon Newton here too. It definitely feels like he would fall in this draft. Just there's so much talent, I think, in quarterback, wide receiver, the wide receiver position, offensive line too. That it certainly makes a case for him to fall this far. And you usually don't see that for pretty talented interior defensive linemen. So, but hey, this is a great example. I think there are a lot of these late first round playoff teams are going to get some really great talent here in this draft. So, yeah, incredible that someone like Newton kind of just falls there. So, but I guess moving on here to Dallas Cowboys. Man, there's so much talent, and I'm like, I want to take them, but do they make sense for the team and where they're at right now? Dallas Cowboys, there's some questions on the offensive line a little bit, but I think there's just enough talent that they'll kind of, I don't want to say overlook it, but yeah, they'll overlook it a little bit. So I think they'll actually go defense here. I see Byron Murphy from Texas, so a little bit more of a hometown boy. I see comparisons as like a Greedy Jarrett. So I think they need to solidify more of the interior pressure. They didn't get too much production there. So getting Byron Murphy, I think, really takes their defense to a second level. I was also contemplating wide receiver, but at the same time, I think there's more of an upgrade, I think, on the defensive side of the ball that is a little bit more needed there to pair up with obviously Micah Parsons and such. So yeah, Byron Murphy, the second defensive tackle out of Texas here. So 2 DTs in a row.
Yeah, I mean, and you sniped my pick. That was going to be my next pick for the Green Bay Packers at 25. So excellent for you to kind of step in there and really put me on my toes. But no, I think this is smart. For Dallas, I was kind of looking at offensive line as well. I think that they've got an opening at center, which would make one of the top prospects on the board pretty interesting. But they also have a pretty experienced line around Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. So just thinking of the best way they can to kind of take their team to another level. I mean, I feel like every year we look at the Cowboys roster and we're kind of not finding too many holes across the board, but in the same sense, like they always seem to fall, very, very short. So, no, I think that's a smart play, and obviously he was the next guy on my board. So, kudos to you. Kind of looking at the Green Bay Packers at 25, I think they do need that, defensive interior help. Byron Murphy would have been perfect for them, but I think they also have needs on the offensive line as well. I mean, we talked a lot about, the tackle position. We don't really know what's going on with David Bakhtiari. I think he's in his last year as well, kind of going into 2024. So, could they look at, some sort of tackle of the future here? I don't see a ton of elite options left on the board, at least in my first round. So, I might pivot here and, to try to take my center position up a huge notch here. It was actually the guy I was going to take, for Dallas, but I could easily see him slotting on over to the Green Bay Packers in Jackson Powers Johnson. I think he's a guy who's just continued to rise up the boards. I think, from where we started, he was a second round, prospect there, and I think it's almost a certainty now that he'll fall somewhere in that tail end of the first round. I think that the more protection that Jordan Love can have, guys are on the cheap, guys that can kind of grow with Love in a lot of ways. It might be wise of them to go out and get the biggest impact maker, I think, under center, and just take their chances from there.
Gosh damn it, man. Like, yeah, he definitely is a fast riser. He's a lot of Bears fan. Like, this is pretty funny, right? He's a lot of Bears fans, like, top pick. It's like, I've seen so many podcasts watched so many video casts or listen to some podcasts saying that they would actually consider taking Jackson Powers Johnson with the 9th overall pick. So getting him, having him fall here to, I guess, the number 25th pick with the Green Bay Packers, that definitely is, a headshot basically to a lot of Bears fans here. So great pick for the Packers. I think I've seen some other mock drafts where he does fall here. So, great value, I think. And, a lot of people, they look at it's like, why do you take this offensive, center, maybe slash guard here in the first round? But everything I've seen and read, like, he's like the best one in years, basically. So he's like up there with like the, Tyler Lindenbaums of the world from Iowa, right? That got drafted by the Ravens there. So great pick. Hate it too, from the Packers there. But I guess moving along to the 26th pick, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of there's several things up in the air with free agency, I think, right? Obviously, it was Baker Mayfield, but obviously, Mike Evans, he's definitely, 30 years old now, which is, I guess, ancient in the wide receiver world, has been a staple over there for the Buccaneers. Like, do they move on from him? Do they, get younger at the wide receiver position? They do have Godwin, Trey Palmer, who they've drafted, Cade Auden, but obviously Mike Evans, like, there's only so many wide receivers that are up to his capabilities. So, for me, I went the whiteout route, actually. I think maybe they do move on. We'll see. I think there's rumors maybe a tag goes on or some sort, but I think it's time for them to move on. Maybe they figure things out with Baker Mayfield a little bit more so, or maybe they do move on from there. But in this situation, I'm going to go wide receiver. I think, they do move on from Mike Evans, just with the talent that's on the board here. I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. I think he kind of just fits right in with where Mike Evans would be. Big, tall, wide out, great catch radius with some speed. I think him pairing up with Godwin, like I mentioned before, in that offense, kind of a plug and play, just cheaper, younger. It's the NFL. Sorry. Thanks for the memories again. Thanks for the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And, he definitely is positioning himself for a Hall of Fame career. I just think, now this might be a good time to just move on. We don't know what's happening with Baker Mayfield. So, and I think from the Buccaneers standpoint, I think they could use some youth on the offensive side there with, kind of switching off from Mike Evans to Brian Thomas. So, that's my pick, the 26th pick from the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I feel like looking at Tampa Bay, they have so many needs, I think, where I focus a little bit for them is on the edge. Kind of looking at the fact that they have Vita Vea, Elijah Cansey there, kind of more or less on the interior. You can bring over, at least in this one, there's a handful of edge options I think are totally worthy of a first round pick there. But yeah, like you're saying, you lose Evans, that's going to be a huge blow to that offense. I mean, if they bring back Mayfield, he's going to need a guy, along with Godwin that he can truly rely on. I mean, he needs as many weapons as he probably can get, to be honest with you. So, absolutely, if they lose Evans, I think, wide receiver becomes an immediate priority.
Yeah, sounds good. Who do you got for the Cardinals now with their second pick in the first?
Yeah, I'm pivoting yet again here. I see some talent that's kind of falling down the board, available to me at 27. I think, like Tampa Bay, in two different positions. Tampa Bay made the playoffs. Arizona was absolutely terrible, but Arizona has so many needs that, kind of going into this draft, I think they can actually get really creative. They could make, I think a trade down. They could trade up. I mean, they just need so much, depth at so many different positions that, I mean, really they can let the board kind of fall to them and just take the best player available. Honestly, so at 27, looking at some of the guys who didn't fall yet. I'm just going to go with an edge rusher there, in Jared Verse. I think, kind of thinking maybe he'd go, somewhere in the early 20s. Guy with, just great finesse. He's got a huge, really great move set. He's very physical. I think one knock that they have on him is like his ability to get, toward the inside and make tackles. Sometimes he gets a little bit too aggressive in the pass rush that he lets, tackles slip through his fingers. He lacks a little bit of control, they say, in that sense. But, on a team like Arizona, where you've got, a lot of time to develop, a lot of time to kind of learn and, go through some of your hiccups there. I think getting a guy who's got the upside that a Jared Verse does, makes a lot of sense for them. Continue to kind of build on that defense. This team also needs a lot of help in the secondary. I mean, their corners are pretty weak, and it sounds like they're going to lose, Buda Baker to free agency if he doesn't want to go back to the only team he's ever played for. So, could be another ugly year yet again in Arizona. I mean, grabbing Marvin Harrison toward the top of the board will feel really good to fans and to kind of get the offense established there. But yeah, at least on the defensive side, why not go out and get a guy you can make kind of be a cornerstone, I guess, for their defense.
Yeah, and Jared Verse has quite a range, I feel like. I know some mock drafts, they have him maybe going to the Bears there at the 9 spot. And then, yeah, some other drafts like one we have here, he falls to the 27th pick. So, but, ultra talented player, is a difference maker, vocal leader too. I remember, I kind of followed the Florida State team a little bit. Just I liked what I heard and then saw, and really like Jared Verse, and he definitely is that vocal person. Was like 220, I think, going into college, and then now he's like 250, just like packed on muscle over one off season there. I forget what college he was before Florida State, where he transferred to. But yeah, just packed on a bunch of muscle and became kind of a wreaking havoc that he is on the edge rush position. Just needs to be a little bit more consistent, but at the same time, this, late in the first round, I think this is a great haul, I think, for the Cardinals. I don't think they can go wrong necessarily in this draft, right? Like, maybe take like a kicker or something, but yeah, like it's really going to be hard for the Cardinals, I think, to mess this up. So yeah, I think that's a great pick there. Then I guess moving on to the 28th pick here, we got the Buffalo Bills. I think they need some wideout help. I think Josh Allen, looking at Stephon Diggs, he's only getting older. Gabe Davis, he's been very, very inconsistent. I know they got Kincaid, and obviously, I like Khalil Shakir, what we saw from him at the slot position, but I think they need somebody on the outside more so of. And I'm looking at the draft board, looking at a very talented wideout right here, Keon Coleman from Florida State, who we just mentioned here. I think he's, big, tall wide receiver, pretty physical. I think he transferred from Michigan State, I believe. Has a lot, pretty decent production. I think some people actually had him maybe going higher in the draft. But, hey, this is just kind of how the things worked out in a very talented wide receiver draft. So, but yeah, he is a playmaker, can make has a good catch radius. And I think with Josh Allen, like I mentioned before, Stephon Diggs, just needs more depth there at the wideout position. And I think, that could be a difference maker here. So yeah, Keon Coleman falling here to Florida State. or falling here to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. Especially, hearing a lot of the rumors that Diggs, maybe on the move too. I feel like that pairing we've talked about in the past, like there's some friction going on there in Buffalo, whether it's with Allen and Diggs or Diggs and the coaching staff or Diggs and just wanting to, find greener grass somewhere. It just seems like he might be a guy on the move. And Josh Allen, one of the best arms in the game. And we talked a lot about like his physicality and his ability to run is also just what it makes him great. But he definitely has one of the best arms in the game. So to kind of pair him up with a guy like Keon Coleman would make that offense more explosive with or without Diggs. I just I'm still curious as to what's going to happen there, but for sure we'll probably find out, maybe by the draft what's going to happen at that position. But regardless, I think going out and getting another receiver, especially with Gabe Davis also walking, will be important for Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it was either that or cornerback position. A lot of great talent out there. So, but yeah, I feel like again, the way that this draft is going to turn out. There's going to be a bunch of steals that playoff teams are going to be getting, and we're going to be like, how did they get that player? So, anyway, who do you got at 29 for the Detroit Lions there?
Yeah, I'm going to stay on the same position, but I'm moving to another guy, another guy that fell down the board. I think you mentioned him, but Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins going to Detroit. This would be an absolute nightmare for Bears fans and for just I think anyone in the NFC North. I think having another cornerback was the missing piece for the Lions this past year. I mean, toward the playoffs, they were putting in Vildor, who was kind of let go by the Bears, and that was one of their, main liabilities in the secondary. I think just having a guy like him on the rookie contract, he's one of the best cornerbacks that are coming out of this draft. Very high Q, polished. He's got great length, really long arms. I think he's, at least the things he could work on is obviously his tackling, his physicality. It's one of those guys I was talking about, like a more thin build, type of frame for a cornerback, maybe not as physical as a Cooper DeJean, but, you know, everything that I'm looking at as far as his strengths go, it just seems like a guy who's really good at playing man to man, really good in coverage, and just able to kind of knock down passes due to his length. So, if Detroit can continue to kind of build in that secondary of theirs, I don't know if CJ will be back for them. He may come back, he may not. But guys like Kirby Joseph, others, in that on that team really stepped up this past year. But I think they need some more, A-listers there to kind of build around, a great, front seven of theirs.
Yeah, I mean their secondary was atrocious. Like that was the big Achilles heel. So like I would be surprised if they took anything else besides cornerback or safety there. Do you really want Kindle Vildor being your any cornerback on the field for you, being a playoff team? I don't think so. And that, there was several plays there that we think we saw in the playoffs where Vildor was exposed and their lack of secondary depth was just exposed there. So definitely need that. And yeah, some great talent here that we're seeing on the board. Nate Wiggins falling this to the Lions. That would be a dream come true for sure, I think, for them. And I guess moving on to the number 30th pick here, Baltimore Ravens, my AFC team. And I am very excited about kind of how this has fallen here. So, man, Ravens, one of the better seasons that they've had. Didn't end up well, but there's definitely one position I think that they could upgrade on is cornerback position. They, opposite of Marlon Humphrey, they don't have too much depth there. So I'm going to look at a player that fits exactly the kind of cornerbacks that they tend to like and gravitate towards. Tough, physical, really good in press coverage. He had a great Senior Bowl here and really stood out. Quinion Mitchell, cornerback from Toledo. He fits everything that you want from a cornerback for the Ravens. Everything I mentioned before, I think he can learn a lot also too from Marlon Humphrey. And, Marlon Humphrey is only going to get older too. So I think just upgrading the cornerback position, getting more talent, getting more depth there, I think makes the most sense. They could go the wide receiver route, but I honestly feel like they're pretty decent over there, especially with Lamar kind of just throwing to the tight ends a little bit, develop more of a rapport with Likely, etc. And obviously Andrews and Zay Flowers there. Still have Rashawn Bateman. So much more of a need at the cornerback position. But yeah, love Quinyon Mitchell for the Ravens. This would be a dream, I think, for the Ravens here, just having a quality quarterback falling to them here.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely rising up boards right now. I mean, from where he kind of started, pre-Senior Bowl to now, I mean, it almost feels like he's the second cornerback kind of slotted, in there. I've seen like behind Cooper DeJean in some of the rankings I've been, staring at. But yeah, no, overall, I think no, he'd be a good get for them, especially at the end of the first round there. So, Baltimore just getting kind of richer on the defensive side of the ball, for sure. At 31, I'm looking at the San Francisco 49ers, a defense that was really stout all throughout the year. I think there's one thing that I'm looking at. It's kind of a glaring need for them, especially next year, but also the year after moving forward, is the offensive tackle position. Trent Williams right now, 35 years old. McKivitz, their other tackle, I mean, really didn't have a great year last year, across from Trent Williams. So if there's something that they'll obviously need, it's more and more protection for Brock Purdy, for Christian McCaffrey, obviously setting up that receiving game as well. So kind of looking at the board, guys that are available. I took Jordan Morgan at this spot out of Arizona. I think from what I had read, just a really strong blocker, really big hands. If there's something that he could definitely improve upon, it's his pass protection. He's much better in the run. I think for San Francisco, that's probably a better thing to be good at, is just help to set up Christian McCaffrey, kind of learn on the job. Whether or not he's your blindside tackle moving forward is one thing. Maybe you could just be on the other side, but overall, I think they're going to need to build that depth, especially making another run toward a Super Bowl this upcoming year. I also looked at some cornerback help for them. I think they could definitely upgrade at that position, and there are obviously some cornerbacks left on the board in Kool-Aid McKinstry and Kamari Lassiter that may be of interest to the 49ers here, but decided to go with the offensive tackle help first.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I think that's probably the pick I would have chosen too. Jordan Morgan, he's very physical from everything I've read, can play either tackle position. So was a little bit banged up, I think, in his college career, but had all the physical traits and showed a lot of great flashes. And I definitely see him probably going the first round either to here or possibly the Chiefs, who I have coming up with my next pick here. So yeah, I guess with that, Kansas City Chiefs on the clock, Super Bowl champs. I think I called it in our preseason picks to have the Niners go against the Chiefs here and having the Chiefs win. So very much happy about that, especially my wallet a little bit too with the bets I made there. So very excited to be making this last pick. And I've seen several mock drafts trying to figure out who the Chiefs ought to be getting here, and I'm really excited about this that he's fallen here. I don't think it's a reach. I think this totally makes sense. I'm gonna go with a speedster that can blow off the top. That was like the one thing that the Chiefs they really struggled with, was getting a wide out that kind of had that Tyreek Hill effect, right? They have some possession wide receivers here and there. Rashee Rice definitely catches things over the middle and helps them out there, and can catch things on the run and break it. But they don't have necessarily that wide out that can just go down the field, utilize all of Patrick Mahomes' arm power, arm talent there. We saw what he was able to do with Tyreek. We saw that pass to McCole Hardman too, between the safety and the cornerback. That was a tremendous pass that he had. He needs more of that. Obviously, I think offensive tackle was another position I was looking at. Yeah, Jordan Morgan falls there. That can definitely be up in the air, but there's no question that they need a wide out. I think from the tackle position, I'm like, maybe they go with Wanya Morris more so of, who's already on their team. They've drafted some talent. Maybe they just utilize that draft capital that they've spent past couple of years. He kind of spelled also Donovan Smith for a couple games when Smith was injured. So I'm feeling pretty confident they go wide out. And yeah, I would be so excited for all the Chiefs fans, all the Taylor Swifties out there. Getting Troy Franklin from Oregon, just so elite, 6'3", about 190, fits the bill exactly what the Chiefs are falling or what they want, what they need, and everything. And I think he can make Andy Reid really happy. And yeah, this definitely I think would help out Patrick Mahomes a lot, and especially as they're thinking about what is life going to look like without Travis Kelce in the future. One way is just solidifying those wideouts. So yeah, got Troy Franklin out of Oregon here.
Yeah, I did too. I had Troy Franklin in my 32 slot there. I mean, a 4.35 40 for a guy who's 6'3". I mean, like you're saying, they've been missing that Tyreek Hill type threat. I mean, this guy's even got a little bit more size there to boot. I think going across the field with Rashee Rice going forward would be an awesome pairing. You could say goodbye to Tony, MVS, Hardman, all these washout kind of guys, Justin Watson types. I mean, maybe have one of those guys stick around just for the experience, but yeah, it could really help to like refresh that whole core. I think that is the most important thing for them right now. I mean, obviously, like you're saying, like any line help on either side of the ball will always be helpful, especially if Chris Jones happens to sign elsewhere in free agency. That'll be a huge need of theirs. But yeah, I think first and foremost, like Patrick is going to need to have another guy he can rely on and really go to. Because this last year, I mean, just watching him regular season was kind of painful, especially for how good Mahomes is. He definitely needs to be able to put up the numbers he's capable of every year.
Yeah, no, he was kind of like he was pulling his punches in a way. It felt like, just because the amount of wide receiver talent that was on there, like Watson, right? Like Watson's decent. Like I'm not gonna like you're in the NFL, you're playing, right? You're better than me at wide out. So, but he's not like it definitely feels like it's that Tom Brady area where he's throwing to who's this wide receiver? This was it Chris Hogan? I think was a wide receiver he threw to when he won a Super Bowl. I think he played lacrosse at Duke or something. So anyway, yeah, it just seems like he needs that electric talent, and I think Andy Reid's going to know how to use him. I think they led the league in drops right this previous season, so having just more wide receiver talent I think makes sense. And yeah, if Troy Franklin can replicate kind of the success that Rashee Rice had, then I think that's great. I think that sets things the Chiefs up for success for the future. And yeah, with like Donovan Smith and such, we were talking about Chris Jones. That's the big thing for them. He says he wants to stay. I think he made the big scene of that in the parade today that they had, to the point that his agent was, I don't know if you saw that tweet or whatever. He was like, this guy's had way too much to drink or something. Bartender, can you get this guy? Because he doesn't want to kill his leverage. So yeah, if they can get a deal for him, it might be bye-bye to L'Jarius Sneed. Like that could be something to look out for. But at the same time, they're a much better team, obviously, with L'Jarius Sneed over there. So they can just keep everybody there. Maybe say goodbye to Donovan Smith, move over either Wanya Morris, or before the season started, I think they were looking at moving Jawan Taylor over to left tackle, but maybe they felt otherwise afterwards, seeing him and talking with him about that. So yeah, just got to figure that out and see how the salary cap folds. But it's going to be a lot of maneuvering. It's probably a lot of contract restructuring from Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, if they get Troy Franklin, man, do we see a three-peat? I feel like we're going to see a three-peat if the Chiefs get Patrick or get Troy Franklin over here. So just overall great team, I think, here. And yeah, what a Super Bowl.
Yeah, man. I mean, three-peats. It's gonna be crazy if they happen to pull that off. They'll definitely need a full team around them, healthy and all that, all that else too. So we'll just have to see, man. I don't know. Like that'd be crazy. It's possible, but definitely would be crazy to actually see happen. But if there's one guy that I feel most confident in with the ball in his hands, when the big game is on the line, like Patrick Mahomes is like proving really, really quickly that like that GOAT conversation could turn, starting next year, the year after, because man, first 6 years, 6 AFC title, you know, appearances at the very least. Like at the very least, he's been to 6 straight AFC title games. So like kudos to him, man. Awesome year for those Chiefs. And yeah, we'll just have to see. But that's our top 32 here going through the first round of the NFL draft. Folks, if you're still with us, subscribe to this page, like this episode, comment as well on anything that you agree with, disagree with. Were there any players that fell off the board that you were interested in, or was there a different choice you may have made somewhere throughout this draft? Like, please let us know in the comment section. I wanted to ask Wayne, kind of looking at this first 32, what are some of your takeaways, I guess, after going through it? Was there any guys that slipped off your board, or guys you think we should keep an eye on that maybe we didn't talk about?
I mean, my initial reaction is obviously like, how will this draft basically change from the quarterbacks positions there? Just because we saw so much talent fall, from the 20 to 32, right? We see, Jerzon Newton falling to the Texans here. Nate Wiggins falling to the Lions. Jared Verse, right, falling to the Cardinals. A lot of that could be impacted, obviously, by maybe the Raiders. Yeah, they get Russell Wilson or something, so they don't want to get a quarterback there. Things like that can definitely change and shift. So, but yeah, this definitely is going to be an interesting, I think, draft coming out here. Yeah, I don't know. Trying to see who we might have missed. I think I can't see who's on the board of my. I'm in a mock simulator here, just kind of taking notes here. But I know Graham Barden's one guard. I think that a lot of people are looking at. He is definitely a fringe, like first round, second round type of talent there. So it kind of fits right in here. I think Kool-Aid from Alabama, that cornerback, like again, it's a pretty talented cornerback draft. So I think you can get some good talent in the second round. But yeah, Kool-Aid was definitely one name that I had on here as well. That both of us, I guess, kind of missed here. Just at least that's just how the draft board felt. So yeah, those are just a couple I think that I saw here. Xavier Worthy, he could definitely be first round kind of wideout as well. So. Tyler Nubin, safety. He's definitely a first round kind of grade, I think, for a lot of people. It's just, yeah, safeties maybe aren't as needed. And then, maybe Trey Benson. I know running backs aren't sexy anymore, but he definitely, like, when you watch the tape on him at Florida State, he was arguably the best player. Maybe didn't get the ball as much because they just had a lot of talent at wideout, but he was really creating havoc there. So, yeah, just a couple of names out there. But are there any names that you think fell off the board here in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, you said Kool-Aid, and then like looking at my board, how things kind of shook out. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., Kamari Lassiter, 2 other corners going along with Kool-Aid McKinstry that weren't taken that first round. I mean, what it says to me is there's a lot of cornerback depth at that elite level, that first 2 round level. So it's almost like if you're team positioned somewhere in the middle, of the first round, like a Jacksonville Jaguars, you're looking at filling up the cornerback position or the edge position. Maybe you wait. You don't take Terry and Arnold at 17. You take Latu or Jared Verse, and then you kind of come back in that second round and hope that one of those 3, McKinstry, Rakestraw, or Lassiter, is there, right there for you. So I think it gives a lot of optionality to teams that are trying to build secondaries, which was pretty interesting to me. And then Braylon Trice is another name that's come up for us as being an edge rusher, somewhere in that first round, early second. Didn't happen to go off our board in this one. So again, if you're looking for that edge help, like, you're the Raiders or, another team up in that top, slots of picks, like the Atlanta Falcons, like we went with Dallas Turner there, but like, what if you go with, Malik Neighbors instead, fill out that second wide receiver slot of yours and hope that a guy like Trice is available for you, or Chop Robinson. So, I mean, there's just some optionality there. I just kind of like making some observations on the fly, but as these teams go through it, there might be, some lessons they learn if they do, full mock draft like we just did.
Yeah, like AD Mitchell too. Like a lot of people have him, obviously as a first round talent. So that certainly is, yeah, the Bears, right? If we are able to get some more second round picks, apart from Justin Fields, maybe we do trade back on that ninth pick. Maybe somebody does try to, draft a Bo Nix or a JJ McCarthy there to jump ahead of, like you mentioned, the Vikings, the Broncos, potentially the Raiders there too. So, if something like that happens and maybe the Bears are able to accumulate more second round draft capital, that could be huge because, this second round is going to be loaded just because, if there's 5, 6 quarterbacks or 5 or 6 wide receivers taken, the other positions are pretty talented too. So you can load up on those positions. Like you mentioned, especially for the cornerback position that we see here. So just a lot of great talent that's still on the board going to the second round. And yeah, it just seems like this draft is going to be like, I think there's been a lot more conversations happening now that next year's quarterback draft is not going to be as good. So there's going to be a lot of teams calling and trying to reach for a JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix, right? I think in that position. So definitely interesting. Going to be interested to see what happens. I think in that draft area from potentially 9 all the way through maybe 14, something like that. So just a lot of quarterback needy teams, and then we'll see what happens in free agency if anybody makes any trades. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, etc. So.
Yeah. Thinking about where Russell Wilson, will land is important. I mean, obviously, we didn't make any trades through in that first round. It's not that we probably don't think I think there's gonna be a handful of trades in that first round
Yeah.
for sure. But kind of going through it without touching anything, like I think we did our best to kind of put the best guys or the ones that are maybe most needed on those right teams there in that first round. But I think another thing to look at too is, Arizona and Washington both having 3 picks within the top 40. I mean, we talked about how deep this draft is going to be in those first couple rounds, especially at like the edge position, wide receivers, et cetera. Like those teams are going to have some pretty fun boards that they walk away with. I think, if Washington goes ahead and takes that quarterback, do they pair up those second round picks to grab a tackle, or, could they get, maybe a tackle falls to them somewhere in that, premium second round pick of theirs, and they get,
Mm-hmm.
a top build cornerback as well. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of things
Yeah.
that both of those teams probably will do that'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and I've been seeing some mock drafts too from the Commanders' standpoint as well, and it's like they can definitely use some line help on both sides of the ball. And in that second round, you mentioned Braylon Trice, and then there's Barden too. I think we talked about him before. So a lot of talent in the second round that I think if I'm a Commanders fan, I'd be excited for this draft because they got 2 pretty early round second round picks there. So a lot of potential I think for the Commanders to build a really decent squad by not trading back, right? I think for them, or not trading up to get Caleb Williams. So yeah.
No doubt. Well, any other thoughts surrounding the draft or football?
Oh man, I don't know. There's so much here. But I think like I mentioned before, was it Brock Bowers, man? Like such a range for such a talented tight end that he can just fall like that far, fall from like a fifth pick to potentially we have him going 15th here. I think some draft boards maybe have him going to Seattle even. So the exciting one would be if he goes to 18 to the Bengals, right? Like pairing up with Joe Burrow and that team, like that would be exciting. But man, just shows like the variations that this draft can go, and also just shows like the depth of in the top 15 or top 10 just of wideouts, offensive linemen, and quarterback. Obviously, right? Just a lot of depth, I think, there that just pushes a lot of talent back in the draft.
No doubt, no doubt. And we'll see. Yeah, I mean, just like on the other end of that, it's like the Michael Penix possibility of him going 13. I mean, to me, honestly, like it's possible he lands there. Maybe it's not with the Raiders. Maybe there are different types of trades that go down here, but just the variance that could be for those 3 quarterbacks that find themselves in the middle of our mock draft here. It's like I could see them going higher than that. I could see them going in the second round at some point. So it's just kind of like there's going to be a ton of variance, I think, with some of these premium positions, and some guys will be left out.
Yeah, yeah. If Michael Penix falls to the second round, like that'd be interesting. You talk about some of these teams, in the top 10 here that maybe need a quarterback. Maybe the Falcons, maybe they're able to get him or something like that, or maybe the Vikings, with their second round pick, I think they might have if they don't take JJ McCarthy. Like things like that could happen and shape out. So it's really just going to be interesting of how the second round. Like to me, that's going to be where the money is made. I feel like in that second round there, just all the things that can happen and fall there.
For sure. Well, yeah, I mean, this was a really full, detailed analysis here of this year's upcoming draft. Again, Wayne's going to be there live in Detroit. So if you happen to be there, go bump into Wayne. Tell him you love Ball and Breakfast podcasts, and he'll sign an autograph and he'll take a picture, with you. He's a really humble guy like that. So don't be afraid of his star power there. But yeah, if you're still with us here, like, subscribe, review us wherever you may be at. Follow us on Instagram at Ball and Breakfast. And with Wayne, I'm Patrick signing off.